ahead. Look at that. I'd been doing some volbiv guiding in the Pyrenees the week before the Gumball and was enjoying some sightseeing in Barcelona before my flight to Nice on Saturday evening. Being a cheapskate, I decided to kit down in Nice airport for the night and woke up at 5 AM to catch the first tram into the city centre. And I walked from the tram stop at Jean Médecin to the Gare de Chemin de Fer de Provence and had time to make a quick brew before the 06:55 train for Digne departed. It's a wonderfully scenic 2.5 hour journey, and arriving at the station in Saint-André-les-Alpes is always a delight. From there it was only a short walk to the landing field, where most of the Gumball crew had gathered. I wasted no time putting my glider in the queue for Navette, and whilst waiting I wolfed down a coffee and pastry and was on takeoff by 11:30. Well, there's 11 of us for the Gumball 2021, gathered on takeoff, and it's looking pretty nice. Pretty sweet climb above takeoff. Three to 5 meters per second. Just stay in it. And I'm up at 2,500 meters. Just beautiful. That's the way we're heading. It's always a bit tricky getting 11 pilots off the ground quickly, so we're just going to loiter up here before heading north. So yeah, I was a bit low going onto the Côte Longue and just got really bad sync, but these little nipples here are working quite well. That's the way we're heading. Bit more cloud now. So got up to 3,000 meters just by the side of the Cheval Blanc, and now following Reese. Hi folks, just about to start. Perhaps someone could just type something in the live chat just to see whether I'm going to pick up that, because if you've got any questions as we're going through, that'll be the best place to do it. Cheers. So I left Cheval Blanc at 2,500. I can see a glider in front of me on the lower slopes. Yeah, thanks Thomas, thanks Rod, Richard, Jeff, cyclic pilot. I guess you're a helicopter pilot. Yeah, cheers guys. Right, I think we can probably start. So let's just pause this and I'll switch to the main camera. And yeah, it's a bit, I'm going to turn the volume down on, I've got it running in an iPad as well, because that's my second screen. So I'll turn the volume down in that, otherwise it'll be very distracting. Good, well, we've got, I think we've got 50 odd people watching, so that's amazing. Thanks for turning up. Now, I've got some questions that have been sent to me in advance, and I haven't got any questions yet from the live chat, but I'm going to try and remember to monitor that. I hope you've all got a beer in front of you. I have. Anyone come across this little special Brave hop? It's quite nice actually. It's a bit weird because I'm so used to doing Zoom calls over the last year that actually not hearing anyone else talk is going to be a bit weird. So yeah, maybe we should have gone for Zoom. Anyway, let us press on, and yeah, do fire away with any questions in the chat, and I'll hope to pick it up. So I've printed them all out. I've got quite a few here, but let's just see how it goes. So, and I haven't really sorted them out into categories yet, so I'm just gonna read them out as they come, as they came in. So Brian Sanders sent a few questions via Telegram. He says, your flights are well documented, but how did the others get on? I've had a peek on X contests, so I know a few bits of what the others did, but I would love to hear more about the others less experienced than yourself and how they got on with their experiences. What were their challenges? What did they learn? What would they do differently? And he'd like to know all that in the context of what their current XC experience is. So that's a whole bunch of questions, some good ones. So there were 11 of us this year, and ranging from sort of my level experience down to some guys who their mountain experience was, or mountain XC experience wasn't huge. They'd flown in mountains but not really done any decent long XCs. So, and those guys, I'm thinking Cyprian, if you're watching, hi, or if you watch later. I mean, he had an absolute blast. He loved every minute of it. But his XCs were pretty short. But it was the whole volbiv experience that he was after. So, I mean, that worked really well for him. So he learned a hell of a lot, including packing up his kit and getting ready and all sorts of stuff like that. Flying wise, I assume he learnt a lot, but I don't actually know. But I have seen he's been knocking out some pretty good cross countries from the tow field actually since he's been back. Others, I mean, it just varied. I think everyone had an absolute blast. You know, the conditions on the last couple of days were a bit tricky, pretty stable, but everyone enjoyed themselves. What did they learn? What would they do differently? Yeah, I'm gonna skip over that. In terms of their current XC, there was a wide range. I mean, Minsec has got a lot of XC experience in certainly in the UK. Done some 200k flights. Not so much in the Alps, but has done 100k's in the Alps. So yeah, and Reese has done a lot in the Alps. Chris has done some 150k flights, 140k flights last year. He didn't have so many long flights this year, just the way it panned out. So I'll go on to Brian's second question, saying, one chap had an accident. What were the circumstances, if they don't mind sharing, and can we learn anything from this or other mishaps? So I will just switch to Google Earth and show you where it happened. It was on day 2. And it happened, yeah. Just waiting for the live stream to catch up. Yeah. So we had taken off from near the sanctuary, the Sanctuaire de Notre-Dame de la Salette, and we'd flown over to here. Took ages to climb out here, and then we got high, came along here, and I mean, I don't know the exact route that Piotr took, but this is the Massif de Taillefer, where I've camped out before. It's a beautiful spot, and here you have a choice of diving over to the main Grenoble Valley, which is up here, or staying on the south side. And it was a little bit tricky, to say the least. There was plenty of nice scratching going on here to get up here. And in fact, this is in that second video. I think it was somewhere here that I said, "Yeah, I'm loving this." Or no, I think I said, "Hey, this is fun." That's right. And that was about here. But anyway, Piotr obviously got low in this valley, and this is a windy valley here. And he was okay. He was setting up to land somewhere down here, but the wind changed direction, and he got blown into some trees, and he sort of basically crashed into some trees, and then landed heavily on his back, and he fractured a lower vertebrae in his back, and he's fine. He's back in Poland, and he's in a back brace, so he will make a full recovery. And the moral is, well, he landed. He'd got out into a wider bit of the valley, so it was a pretty sensible place to try and land, and some nice fields here. So I think he was just a bit unlucky with the way the wind changed at the end, probably. I'm just looking at some of the comments. Oh yeah, there's some more questions. I'll try and make sure I get back to those at the end. So yeah, the wind's going to be blowing from left to right up here. It's going to split here, and I guess maybe the fact that it came around and started flowing south, or maybe it wouldn't go for south. Maybe you've got I'm not sure what would happen with this section here, whether it would come around here and blow down, or whether the wind would be blowing from the southeast to northwest and sort of mix here. I think, given that this is the high ground here, the valley winds here would have been blowing up here, so in there and then down here. So maybe just got a bit unlucky. In terms of previous years, I think the lesson that Steve would say from last year was make sure you really top up before you go on a transition, and don't try and cross a col too low, get maximum height. He was trying to catch people up, and just wasn't patient enough. Had he got another 100 meters height, probably, or maybe 200 meters, he would have been fine. Question 3 from Brian. Last episode this year, you got caught in some windy, gusty and pretty rough conditions. So he's talking about, I'll just bring it up here, the 5th day. He's talking about this little section here. And I could play you a little section of that video, actually. Why don't I do that? Bear with me a second. I'm almost up at 3.7. Just have to scroll forward. It's about 20 minutes, I think. That's just. Yeah, this looks a bit like the start of it.
rough as fuck. I need to try and push out in front.
So looking at my shadow on the ground there, I'm not really penetrating, and it is pretty rough.
Where that sailplane is over on my...
Well, I am penetrating, but I'm not going fast. Yeah, then I get some pretty nasty sink. Yeah, just sort of sliding down the hill here. I'm thinking I'm not really particularly enjoying this. Hope I get out of here. And then, yeah, I thought, oh, this is looking a bit better. I might actually get a bit of a climb here. Took my hand off to turn the camera off, and then got a clap. That's absolutely classic. I'm sure if I hadn't taken my, if I hadn't stopped active flying, then I would have been fine. I'm watching this without any volume. I guess I'm sure you're hearing the volume come through. So I'm not quite sure where I start swearing.
Okay, this is all getting a little bit too exciting.
And anyway, so yes, I was thinking of landing on that plateau you can see ahead at the top of the thing. There's some houses and stuff, but actually I found a climb before then. Anyway, so let's just. Yeah, it was still pretty bumpy and gnarly, but I could have easily landed there had I wanted to, but I found a nice climb beforehand. I'd seen the sailplane ahead climbing. Right, let's pause that and go back to the main camera. So yeah, what was going on there? If we go back to Google Earth, then the wind, this is the Rhone Valley here. It comes from Lake Geneva, does a hard left-hand turn here, and sort of swashes up here and swashes down again, past Sion, and then Visp is the sort of first place here where it sort of takes a left turn slightly up towards Fish. And I guess it's got the opportunity to break off to the right as well. And obviously the wind, the normal valley winds in these valleys will obviously be blowing from north to south, blowing up towards the Matterhorn here and up towards the high ground here. So the natural tendency for the wind will be to come up here anyway. And I think there was a bit of northerly that day, not very much, but I think everything combined, well, I'm not entirely sure. I would like to speak to some locals, but yeah, clearly if there is a northerly wind here, then behind here I'm in the sort of lee of this sort of shoulder, so I think that was partly causing it. But the thing is, I was also pretty high up here. When I arrived here, I was at 2,600, but obviously as I went round here I was getting lower all the time, and I suppose I was about, actually I don't know what height I was here. Let's just have a look. This plateau is at 1900, so I was coming over here, yeah, I was about 2200, so I would have thought I would have been not really in particularly strong valley wind up at those heights, but so I'm not quite sure. The wind certainly here was quite strong, but yet further along here, the wind wasn't that strong. So a combination of, lee side flying, I think valley wind splitting, adding to the normal valley wind, and maybe a little bit of meteo just in here, just combined to make it quite strong. So the question is, with the benefit of hindsight, were you lead side flying? Yeah, I think I probably was. Flying in too windy conditions? No, it was just windy in that spot. Did you just get caught out with any valley flows that you weren't quite expecting? Well, I suppose yes. It wasn't. I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be that windy up there. That's for sure. If it got any worse, what was your plan B? And that would have been to land on this plateau here, or I could have put it down in some of those little fields that I flew over, where the little houses were. What can we learn? What would you do different next time if you were faced with the same gnarly conditions? Well, if it was the same conditions, I'd do the same thing and just push on and either find somewhere safe to land or try and climb out. What can we learn looking at this in hindsight? I suppose the learning is that you've always got to expect the unexpected, and then just deal with it as best you can. I mean, one thing I wouldn't have done is landed low down here, because that probably was quite breezy in this valley. So landing higher up would have been the best option. And maybe had I landed there, I would have walked back up, and then I could probably have walked up here and probably taken off on this slope here, and it would have been absolutely fine. Okay, so that's Brian's questions. I hope I've answered them to your satisfaction. Right, Tim Oatley via YouTube has said, have you done a video on how to pack all your volbiv kit? And what is your average kit weight? So yes, I did do one a couple of years ago when I had my lightness 2. I've now got a lightness 3. I'm just going to switch back to the main camera. Yeah, I haven't done one recently with lightness 3, and in fact I do pack a little bit differently now. And the main technique I use is I take the big foam padding out from under the seat, and fill that with my sleeping bag, sleeping quilt, tent, mattress, poncho, anything that's pretty soft really. And so that all goes in there to replace the foam. And so when I land, I leave it all in there and pack it up in the rucksack. Keep that stuff doesn't come out from there. It stays there till I get to the campsite, and then I take it out. And then in the morning, pack it up into the harness, into that spot there and then. And then the other stuff like food and cooking stuff, that goes into the ballast compartment of the lightness 3, so that's under your thighs, and that stays there the whole time. When I land after flying, it's already there. I pack, fold up the harness into the rucksack, and it stays where it was. And then it's only when I'm actually setting up camp that comes out. So yeah, I don't even have to take the harness and wing out of the rucksack to get all the camping gear out. So it's quite quick and efficient. But yeah, I will do a video, Tim. Watch this space. What is the average kit weight? It's probably about 20 kilograms, and then with another 2 or 3 kilograms depending on how much water I'm carrying. So Jeff Corsa via Facebook. Excuse me. Another kit question. Your new tent looks nice. What is it? So I can show you that. I'll switch to the browser. Oh, actually, whilst I'm on the browser, going back to Brian's last question, I did there is a map of all the valley winds in Switzerland, and if you Google valley wind Switzerland, it comes up. One of the things it comes up with is I think this is still Judith Moll's website, and there's a link at the bottom. You can download a printable PDF here. So if we look at that. I switch to preview. Just wait. Yeah, it's catching up slowly on the live stream. So it's probably worth spending a few minutes just looking at this before we go into more Jeff's questions. So yeah, you can see the main wind comes from, as I said, from Lake Geneva up the Rhone Valley. So it rides up the mountain here and then swashes down towards Sion, and a few people have got caught out landing down near Sion in quite strong winds. Myself last year, yeah, it wasn't that strong, and I had checked via the Meteo Swiss app how strong it was before I made that move. Whilst I was flying, but yes, so it's. The wind is, yeah, this is where I got caught out. I'll just zoom in here. Behind this ridge here. So I think the wind, it can ride over this shoulder and descend here. This is what this red arrow is. It's descending. Yeah, I don't know what exactly was going on here, but if you're flying Switzerland, it's worthwhile having a look at this map. And generally, it's pretty obvious, that the valley winds flow into the high mountains. It's just sometimes where it's not always obvious where the valley winds will change over, will swap. As some, like here, you've got the Furka Pass in the middle of Switzerland. You've got the Grimsel Pass, and you've got the sort of Rhone Valley here. So there's a bit of a mixing point here. And certainly when on this last flight, when I flew up to the Furka Pass, there was definitely a north wind coming along here, or coming down from the Grimsel Pass. You can see the clouds spilling over. It's called the Grimsel Snake. On other occasions, incidentally, when I landed here, there was virtually no wind at ground level at all. A little way back down this valley. Here's Disentis, which is where the World Cup Super Final has been held this week. So yes, you generally get the valley wind blowing from the east here, but often the prevailing wind is sort of more from the west. So higher up you can get a westerly wind, and then you get lower down, and then you get the easterly valley wind. So there can be some nasty mixing. Yeah, so it's worth familiarising yourself and trying to sort of work out for yourself in other areas where you're going to be flying what the valley winds are going to be doing. Right, let's move on to Jeff's question, tent, and we'll do some little bits of kit here. So Safari. Bear with me a second. So I have got a Google Sheet which I can share. I can put it in the show notes in the sort of description once this is all finished. So this, oops, Telegram chiming up. This is roughly what I took this picture last year, so it's not exactly what I've took with me this year, but it's more or less the same. I've just got a slightly different tent this year, and I took a slightly different jacket, but everything else is more or less the same. And yeah, I didn't actually bring a bikini. You'll be pleased to hear. That's just a bag I kept my my washing stuff in, and a little first aid kit, etc. So my tent is this one here. Is it going to open up? Yeah, so it's quite a nice sort of tarpaulin tent, really, with a sort of small mosquito net area in front. It's got this storm flap here you can use if it's going to rain. I hardly ever use that. Looking at here, I kept my glider out here, my rucksack and a few bits and bobs. It's all pretty well sheltered. So yeah, I was really pleased with that. It's well made. It's pretty light. It packs up pretty small. In fact, I've got it here. Just switch back to the main screen. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, about 80 quid or 90 quid or something. Right, so that was the new tent. We've got some questions coming up. Let me just have a quick read of them in the chat. So we got talking about days off the grid, topping up. Yeah, that's questions coming up as well. How warm is sleeping under a wing? Chris is saying the cursor doesn't show up on our screens. Oh, okay, that's a shame. Right, okay, so, oh yeah, Jeff asked about day 5 as well, and so I think we've covered that one. What do you use other than solar power? So, I mean, yes, I had one night, I landed very close to this guy, Vincent's house, completely purely by chance on the end of day 3, and so yeah, you always take the opportunity to top up, to recharge everything from the mains at that point. But I probably wouldn't have needed to. What I take with me is, if this is a 15-watt Anchor solar panel, it's only two panels. And I attach that with these little clips to basically my sort of cockpit. And then I've got some elastic that I sort of loop around my pod to stop it flapping up in my face. And so if I've got 2 of these Anchor batteries, 10,000 milliamp batteries. So I use one, use one when I'm flying on my flight deck, which is here. So at the end of that day, that's quite low because I would have recharged my phone overnight as well from it. And so that one gets connected. I take it off the flight deck, put it in the little cockpit pocket thing, and charge that up the next day during the flight. And so by the end of it, 3, 4, 5 hour flight, it's normally fully charged again. And so you just keep on, repeat. So yeah, it is possible to, I think, with just that one solar panel to keep things topped up. And that includes the GoPro as well. I've got a separate little 5,000 milliamp battery that I just use as a sort of spare to top up the GoPro. So Jeff says he's got a 10-watt charger, so I've got 15. There are bigger ones. It's always a compromise, isn't it? I wouldn't want to fly with something much bigger attached to my pod, really, just get in the way. He also says, do you have something more powerful? Particularly interested in this, having upgraded to an XC Tracer from a Kobo Mini, where the power requirement is much greater. So I'm not quite sure what he's talking about there, because if he's talking about the XE Tracer Max, it's got about a 60-hour battery life, so it's lasted me the whole of 2 weeks without charging up on this recent trip. So that's going to be more than enough. And if it's the other ones, they're solar powered anyway, so you never have to charge them up. He also says, I know you work closely with Advance. Why have they not put compression straps on the lightness backpack? I have the same one as you that loses a great deal of comfort as you can't hold it in shape. I mean, I must admit, I haven't found that problem at all. Maybe you need to put more stuff in your bag, because mine is pretty tight and it certainly keeps its shape, and there would be no need, there is absolutely no need for any compression straps. So I don't see it as a problem. Ashley McMillan. I would be interested to hear your understanding of how you analyse conditions as you make progress on your flight, working out potential lee side areas, valley flows, their strength and direction. I think that just comes down to trying to visualise what's going on the whole time. Just imagine, imagine there's a river in each valley, and the river obviously flows down the valley, and the valley wind does the opposite. It flows from the plains to the high mountains. Once you sort of realise that and understand that, then it's fairly easy to visualise what is going on with the valley winds. Obviously, you can still get caught out. I've definitely been caught out in the past. A few years ago, landing actually more or less the same place where I landed at the end of day 3 this year. I tried to cross that valley. Let's just switch back to Google Earth. So if we look at day 3, so yeah, this is the main Grenoble to Albertville Valley, and the wind, looking at the bigger picture, the wind, I know the wind blows down from Chambéry, and this is quite a windy gap here. The wind, I think the wind blows up here, and I think it sort of goes down here. But this, this valley here is notoriously windy. And you can see I landed. Well, see, if you what you don't want to do, if it's a windy valley, you don't want to land anywhere where it's sort of constricted, because that's going to be windier. So I as I was coming along here, I realised I wasn't getting another climb. I had hoped to get across to here and then try and fly up here, but that just wasn't happening. And in fact, on this day, really and truly, I should have done what Minsek and Feta and Mike did, and hop through the gap here and fly down here and then up towards Albertville, because they made it pretty much all the way to Albertville. But I was just keen to try something a little bit different, and partly, unless you try things, you never know whether they're going to work or not. And I think this area here works much better in spring. That's what Vincent was saying, the French guy, because you just don't get the strong valley winds in spring. But I knew this was a windy valley. The wind, I tried to get as far across as possible, because I knew I'd be slightly sheltered in the lee of the mountain to the north of where I've landed. And in fact, where I landed down here was very little wind, relatively speaking. I think there are some big fields here where people land in, and it's it's windy, but it's pretty smooth airflow, so you're generally okay. But the time a few years previously, I tried to soar along here. I got to climb here, got onto this ridge here, but it was basically just soaring along here directly into wind, and I just went and landed down just near La Chapelle. Sorry, I keep on forgetting you can't see the cursor. I wonder if I can just change that setting. Just bear with me a second. No, I don't think there's the option of doing that. So yeah, it's easy. You just have to always think really what the valley wind's going to be doing. Try and envisage it. And yes, so when I'm flying along here, it's coming from the lower ground, out towards Albertville and Chambéry, and it's flowing down this valley past Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne up towards Modane, where the high ground is. Right. Okay. I hope I've answered that question, Ashley. James Chang via Messenger. I'd like to ask, he's referring back to the second to last day of my trip last year, where I spent about 4 hours flying, not very far. And if I just show this, but he's asking, how do you keep your mental sort of state going when you're having to concentrate really hard up against the cliffs? So let's just put this on quickly.
Jesus.
So he's not particularly referring to this bit just here, although that's part of it. It's just
mind blown.
There were lots. There was an awful lot of scratching around here, and I'll just scroll forward to another area. Well, you can, as I'm scrolling through, you can see the whole flight was up close to rocks. But there was one bit where I spent basically an hour. Yeah. Yeah, flown for 80 minutes now, and we've gone 13 kilometers. And then I spent another hour just soaring on these cliffs here. So yeah, how do you keep concentrating whilst you're doing that type of flying? I'll just pause that. So I think it's all down to your experience really, and how comfortable you are on your glider. I mean, if you're constantly worrying about your glider and you're relatively inexperienced, then you're going to be using up a lot of your bandwidth just flying the glider, and you haven't got so much left just to actually keep yourself safe and away from the cliffs. Does that make sense? The more you can fly your glider in autopilot, as it were, then the more bandwidth you've got left for decision making and keeping yourself calm, when in that sort of potentially stressful flying. So yeah, I hope that answers that, James. Luke Heyman via Page's Messenger. So, how do you deal with the mental aspect, flying into the unknown, often pushing some pretty adventurous lines to save walking? I'm thinking skirting over ridges into the lee with less height than you might on a normal day. Flying into the unknown. It does. at the end of the day, it does boil down to experience, really. Have you flown anywhere similar before? Are there escape routes? I mean, I must admit, I will always give myself an escape route. Like there was one actually on that same flight. Let's just go back to that video because that's quite a good example. Right at the end. Where are we? Getting there. Yeah, I've flown along past the lake. And then I'm heading out into the sort of main valley. And about this stage here, I'm thinking of flying out. You can see a lake in the distance of flying through this gap in the valley. And so I don't know what's around the side there. Are there any landing options? Let's just play from here.
I think Trento is actually over the other side.
But I know there's plenty of landing options behind me, so I can always, yeah, I can
That's a
land down there.
village. What's the wind doing?
But yeah, this is slightly in the unknown, and yes, when I came around here, it was quite windy actually up this valley, which I hadn't particularly expected because I thought it was, you know, it was nice and wide, but it is actually, yeah, it was reasonably windy in this valley as well. I mean, you just have to deal with, not a very good answer. You just have to sort of deal with what you find. But yeah, always leaving you some sort of, you know, relatively safe places to escape to. I'd never go down a dead end valley with no options at all. His second question is more about electronic devices and charging, and I think we've pretty much covered that. Tom Witchley has asked, it'd be great to hear about what tools you use to look at weather forecasts in the Alps. So yeah, I can show you what I use for that, and with a bit of luck I might even be able to share my iPhone screen. Just give me bear with me. Right, so we get a nice infinite picture there. There we go. Hopefully you can see my phone screen. So I use a few apps. Meteo Blue. Let's so yeah, you can see okay. So Meteo Blue is pretty good. It gives you a sort of overview of the day, of the days coming up, and then you click on a day and it shows you hour by hour likelihood of any rain, what the wind's doing. Regarding the wind, I mean, it's saying like 7 to 35 kilometers an hour. I don't know quite how to interpret that. Gusts of 35 kilometers an hour obviously are not particularly conducive to flying. And then a rain sort of radar in the right hand column. So I'll look at the meteograms as well. So these are quite nice. It gives you a sort of visual picture of all sorts of things, temperatures on the top, clouds in the middle, precipitation, the height of the clouds, and then the bottom graph is the wind speed and direction. So you've got the sort of average, and then you've got the gusts. So that's quite nice. To get a better feel for, I'm just trying to think what other. Yeah, the weather maps are basically like Windy, so you just need to sort of play around with it. But there is quite a lot here, and you can change the altitude of the wind. So 10 meters above ground, or 850 millibars, which is I think about 5,000 feet. 700 millibars is 9,000 or something like that, I think. So you can see what's going on at higher altitudes. So yeah, there's a lot to explore in the Meteo Blue app. The other one I use is Meteo Parapont, which has got a really nice sort of simple interface. So where are we? Well, this is the Sion, the Rhone Valley here. Let's just tap on Sion. So one thing I did learn is that you don't really want to just tap on a flying site and then look at the sort of graphic, because that only shows you the winds above, or basically from ground level at that flying site. But just looking at this quickly, we can see that it does it hour by hour through the day, and then the yellow color shows you the sort of height of the thermals and the wind, the wind strength at altitude. So it's pretty windy higher up. Lower down, it's not too bad. And you can get a sounding as well. Not as nice as the rasp soundings. I don't fully know how to, what that is exactly saying. But yes, so we're not seeing what the valley winds are there. So if we tap on Sion itself, then you get a better idea of what the actual valley wind is doing, if anything. So it doesn't look too strong lower down, particularly 20 kilometers an hour is fine. Meteo Parapont, again, you can play around with settings. You've got wind at different altitudes, so boundary layer, sort of average wind. And you can look forward a couple of days, I think, so like Thursday, Friday. It only goes 2 days forward, even with the paid subscription. But yeah, Meteo Parapont is just the fact that you've got this really nice view. Blimey, look at this. We've got nice high cloud base on Friday, up to almost 4,000 meters. Quite windy higher up though, but it's a reasonable day. Other apps, yeah, Meteo Swiss I mentioned is quite a nice app. In fact, it's a really nice app, because what you can do when you're flying is you click on the measurements button, and then you click on the wind tab down the bottom, and then you can zoom in and you can actually see what's happening at Sion here, for example, in the middle of the screen. So we got it's between 9 kilometers an hour and 17 kilometers an hour. So yeah, that's not, obviously that's completely fine. You can see it a lot higher than that. And Visp is lower, 8 to 11, and then the winds hasn't got a reading at Brig, but it's normally less still at Brig. So yeah, handy to have that open when you're flying. If you're making the if you're coming from Chamonix into Switzerland, it's pretty useful to have this open. So those are the main apps I use. The other one actually is soaringmeteo.org, and that gives you quite a nice. I can just show you that in the browser. Let me just switch to Safari. So yeah, soaring meteo. Oh, there we go. Soar GFS, English. So you can get an overview of what's going on by clicking on these the pink sort of squares. It gives you a thermal quality. The lighter the colour, the better. So white and blue is better than red and purple. It goes up to a week ahead. So if we look at Friday, for example, where we saw that quite high cloud base in Switzerland, that's sort of here. You can see it's light blue, so good thermal quality. You can switch to surface winds, so pretty light winds, boundary level winds, pretty light again. Sunshine, etc., etc., etc. So you can. That's a good overview. If you want to, the other thing that's useful to know is Fern. So in that same area, for example, you can see there's these purple lines across in various places across the Alps. So we've got down here in France near the Ecrins, we've got central Switzerland, we've got western Switzerland. So this is showing you how much overpressure there is between the north side of the Alps and the south side. So anything over 4 is Fern conditions. So anything over plus or minus 4. So this is pretty benign until next Tuesday, it's saying. So yeah, nice flying conditions. Let's just have a look down here. Yeah, again, virtually no pressure difference between the different sides of the Alps, so that's good. And then you've got you click on each of these little individual red sort of markers to see what it's like around wherever you're sort of flying. So in the Annecy region, we can look at that. I'm not going to go through all of these little icons, but gives you the thermal quality. So you're looking for lighter colours are best. So yeah, pretty nice on Friday, Saturday, not so good Sunday. And it's showing thunderstorms potentially. It gives the sunshine, sort of size of clouds you can expect, and the I can never remember exactly what everything is, but it's got a pretty good help system. Wind at different altitudes during the day, and if you want, you can even get a sort of textual description of what the conditions are like. The general thermal soaring conditions seem poor. Doesn't sound that bad to me. So yeah, that's soaring meteo. So yeah, soaring meteo, meteo parapont, and meteo blue are the main ones. Okay, so that's all the ones I had before. Let's just go through the ones you've sent during the session. How many? Yeah, so I'm just working down them. Greg Chilton, how many days off the grid volbiv is achievable before needed to top up? I mean, I think, well, topping up reserves is. I guess we've covered sort of electric and kit. That's probably, infinite really if you've got good enough solar power. Plus, you're going to be having the odd meal, so you can charge up your stuff in a restaurant. Just to make sure you take a little USB plug, and I'm just going to show you what I've got. I carry a lot of stuff in a bum bag. So suntan cream, sunglasses, but this little USB charger is great. It's got a 2.1 amp and a 1 amp charger, and all the trains have them, or you have sockets generally, and restaurants you just shove it in the wall socket, and it's very useful. So just keep one of those with you. Food wise, Greg, then I don't know, it just depends how much you're prepared to carry. I think I could just about carry 7 days worth of food. Any more than that would be a struggle to fit in, really, with my present sort of volbiv setup. Toby Callanan, how does your decision making change when in the mountains compared to the UK flatlands? Yeah, so in the mountains you're envisaging. Well, there's two things. You're looking at the airflow, valley winds, and what the wind is likely doing in the mountains, and the prevailing sort of meteo wind is much less important. It's all about valley winds, and you're also obviously looking at the sun and its aspect and sort of rock aspects. So how the mountains are facing the sun. So in the mornings you're flying southeasterly faces, in the afternoon southwesterly, as much as possible. So that's sort of what influences your decision making, really, of route choices. UK flatlands, you're basically flying the sky, or when you get lower you're flying sort of ground sources, but the actual time of day doesn't really come into it particularly, apart from being more conservative in the mornings. Luke Heyman, thanks for doing this. How do you cope with fear when taking punchy lines? You will hear in some of the videos some heavy breathing, sort of letting out a bit of steam. I sometimes will shout at myself or swear, and it all sort of helps. I think just to let out a bit of aggression, I suppose, and just remind yourself that you're actually in charge here. I mean, obviously, if things get really horrible, then and you are scared, then just find somewhere safe to land, and there's no point battling on if you are scared and not enjoying it. And had that windy section on the last day carried on like that, I probably would have landed high, and then maybe hiked up or landed, knocked on someone's doors, had any chance of a beer, something like that. Or I always fly with some whiskey, so I would have had a swig of whiskey. But I know it's been covered in some of Gavin's podcasts, hasn't it? Deep breathing. Gavin talks about his four deep breaths for. Someone will probably pipe in and say what it is, but you're basically slowing it, taking deep breaths, holding it, and breathing out, and do that sort of 4 times, and that settles your nerves. Chris, lesson learnt, don't gamble on finding a thermal in these valleys with no landing options. We should have gone to the main Grenoble Valley. I tried for 1 hour and couldn't get out. Okay, yeah, so we were sort of talking about that earlier. Carl Scragg, old bones and thin blood. How warm is it sleeping under a wing? And the answer is very warm, actually. It's only the last couple of times that I've actually taken a quilt, because I have used my wing previously, and the only reason I haven't done it the last 2 times is just because it's a bit more comfortable with a quilt. It's just softer, a bit less crinkly, but I slept totally fine using my wing at sort of camping up at 2,500 meters. So yeah, wing is fine. You can add. If it's warm, you just have 1 or 2 layers. If it's colder, you just fold more layers on top of you, so you can keep really warm. So yeah, you don't need a sleeping bag, that's for sure. It's just, if you've got the space and you don't mind carrying a little bit of extra weight, then yeah, it's more comfortable for sure. What size rucksack? It's the 90-litre one, Carl. I think it's 91 litres or 90. Right, just scrolling down. Jeff Corser, mobile phone discharges much quicker than the Kobo. Oh, I see what he's getting at. So when he was talking about moving to an XC Tracer, he's got an XC Tracer and a phone as well. So yes, you have to have the phone attached to a battery pack. What were your communication protocols? Radios, Telegram, etc. So yeah, that's basically it. Radios. You always have varying degrees of success with radios. We found that the cheap, eBay type headsets really don't last very long. I've got a Zoot one, which I finally worked out how to use with a helmet that doesn't have the sort of ear pads, because with the Zoot, the idea is you stick the earpieces to the inside of your helmet. So I had mine wrapped up in a buff, which I'd sort of folded a few times, so it sort of kept it on my head and made me look like a bit of a 80s fashion victim, but it did the trick quite well. Telegram, yeah, that was useful in the air as well. You could see, when people had landed. And in fact, when Piotr crashed, he sent a Telegram message that alerted us, and also it alerted other people who were in the Telegram group but weren't actually sort of flying. So that was really good, having the other people looking out for us as well. One that's been talked about a lot, but I don't have any first-hand experience of it, is Zello. So that uses the internet to transmit. And I'm told that works pretty well. Gavin McClurg certainly uses it in the Alps. I know, I can't remember which guy, but some called, one of the guys in the Scottish group as well, Scottish community has used Zello quite successfully. So that's worth trying at some stage. Where are we? Oh yeah, someone. Oh yeah, that was James. Yeah, asking about the Monte Pello to Levico Terme. How do you manage mental balance? So hopefully I've covered that enough, James. It's basically, I think it's experience. The more experienced you are, you're not actually concentrating on flying, the wing. You're concentrating on staying up and soaring close. If I was a less experienced pilot, then you're going to find that really, really tiring. Chris, personally, I would say you have to go out of your comfort zone when flying close to the cliffs. I guess it depends what your comfort zone is, and you wouldn't fly close to the cliffs if it's really turbulent. But if it's light conditions, then you can. It feels fine to go close up to the cliffs. David Morgan, can we join you for next year? What's the minimum standard? I mean, that's That's sort of up to you really, what you feel comfortable with. But everyone, it is open to all, but it is you're on your own. Okay, people are sort of looking out for you, but it's definitely not a guided trip. So you want to have mountain flying experience. You want to have done some, 25, 50k XCs in the Alps, in the Annecy area or St Andre. I mean, I'd say the best training is to go and do some comps out there. Try and get a place in like the Ozone Shabra, the Shabra Open, or the any of the other ones, the BGD Weightless, those sort of intermediate competitions, because you will fly in places you wouldn't sort of normally go if you're just free flying. If you just go to Annecy for a week, you're not really going to set yourself particularly challenging goals, I don't think. With your flights, you're more likely to just sort of stay safe and not risk landing out. But obviously, if you do a comp, then you've got all the retrieve sorted for you, and it's no worries. But having said that, there were people this time who hadn't done much mountain XC flying, just flown sort of locally in the mountains. So it just depends what you want, what you get out of it. If you don't mind, doing 10, 20k flights and then hitching to catch up with the others for the evening, then that's fine. But you've got to be competent at thermaling, and you've got to be a competent sort of active flyer, be able to handle the conditions. Definitely have done an SIV. Only thing you'll be limited to is always money. That's a slightly random comment. Not sure if you already covered this, but where can we find more info on next year's Gumball? Oh, if we were doing one. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll try and do one. So yeah, on the best place to go is to the Facebook page. So if you just go to facebook.com/Gumball Transalps Rally, you'll find it, and just join that page, and you'll see what's going on. And then nearer the time, we can add you to the Telegram group. Any plans for solo volbiv adventures away from the Alps? Probably not. I'm not super adventurous. The Alps is enough for me. I do want to. One year, I'd love to do the whole length of the Alps. All the way from St Andre, all the way to the far end of Austria. Say, be able to spend a bit more time doing it than either a week or 2 weeks. Who knows when that'll happen? But yeah, I don't have any plans to go to, like the Himalayas or Nepal or, the Kyrgyzstan or any of those places. Yeah, I'll leave that to younger, more bolder pilots. So John Peterson, you've done quite a few Alps trips. Any plans? Oh, I think I've just answered that. The answer is no, like the Karakoram. The thing about the Alps, you can do it you've got fantastic flying, great infrastructure, good pizzas. Yeah, I don't want to make life too hard for myself. I mean, yes, you see the videos that people do when they are in the wilds, and it does look amazing, but yeah, not for me. Right, well, I think unless there's any more questions, I've been going over an hour now. My throat is getting very dry. I might wrap this up. You can, if you've got any more questions, just when this video goes live on YouTube, you can just ask them in the comments, and I'll answer them there. But yeah, thank you all for attending. Let me just have a little count of how many people I've got here. I think we got about 50 people. It's saying 288 playbacks. I don't know what that actually means. Cool. Yeah, good flying, everyone. And yeah, either PM me if you want more information about next year's. I mean, obviously it's early days, only just finished this one. But yeah, the more the merrier. The idea with it is to sort of, if we had 30 people, it would be amazing. We'd form into little pods, and you'd find people your own sort of level, and then we'd try and, meet up along the way. And that would be brilliant. 50 people, I'm sure we could do it. Camping it, we might, it might be a bit of a squash camping at St Andre on the first day, say, but, we do tend to split up. It's inevitable, really. But yeah, the more the merrier if you think you've got the necessary skills. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up. Thanks very much, everyone. I've enjoyed doing that. My first one. I think there weren't too many technical hitches, just dogs barking at the beginning. So yeah, cool. Have a good evening, folks, and see you on a hill. Bye.